Good morning and welcome to Millionaire Brand Creation. I'm your host, Michael Banovac. And again, we have an amazing guest. Very, very excited to have Mark Stapp on as our guest. Mark is the director of real estate for WP Carey School of Business, which is my undergrad alma mater, and a ASU program and one of the best. And you're also the executive director of the MRED program, which is an amazing master's degree program that ASU provides. It's one of the best in the country. But more than that, Mark is not only an educator, but more importantly, an investor, a real estate entrepreneur, someone that can give us a behind the scenes as an educator, as well as a person that's actually gone out there and made money. And so without further ado, I'd love to introduce you to my friend, Mark. How are you doing this morning?
Michael, I'm great, and thank you for asking me to be part of this. I very much appreciate it. I love this format.
Oh, well, we love to have you on. And, having met you actually at our Christmas party, for those of you that don't know, Mark is one of my next door neighbors here in Paradise Valley. And I was really excited to have you on as a guest, and more importantly, excited to hear about your story. So if you could walk us back to you as a child and what kind of gave you the zest to become an entrepreneur and get into the real estate space.
All the way back to my childhood, huh? Um, I grew up in this idyllic New Jersey town. My mom was a housewife. My dad ran a industrial textiles company in New York, and so I had the pleasure of working with him all the way through high school and most of my college career. And that provided me with an insight into business, really. And my dad, I tell people, my dad was a Marine drill instructor. So I grew up with discipline and a sense of responsibility and duty. And so he
Mm.
imbibed both of those things in me, and they both served me really well as an adult. I'm also one of those classic examples of somebody who had some learning disability. I was a severe dyslexic. And
Mm.
that also, I think, shaped how I learn and how I interact with people. And it's not surprising to people that have looked at others that have had the same affliction, is it too has served me well in a lot of different ways. However, I was kind of lost. I really had no particular path, direction, and because I struggled in school, and it took me a while to find that passion. And when I did, I really began to have some success, and that too has been helpful to me as an educator, is understanding that not everybody learns the same way, that people come from different backgrounds. They really want to know their story. When I talk to prospective students and I talk to my students, and I also realize the fact that it's not how you start that matters, it's how you finish that matters. And people deserve opportunities. And, all of those things kind of came together to shape how I approach people, how I approach the business, and I think have helped me navigate, my life in a way that I've been successful. Um, you mentioned at the beginning, Michael, how I also lost money in this business, right? And we learn
Yeah.
more through those failures than we do from those successes. And those things, I think, have provided the framework for how I've created and tried to develop a culture for the master's program in particular at ASU.
And what have you learned from your failures? Because I know from my perspective, I've lived through, I would say, two or three really bad bear markets. My father probably five. He made and lost his fortune three times. And I always say the best business people learn the most when their back is against the wall and they don't have a lot of choices in life. How did that affect you? And what were some of the I wouldn't say failures, but setbacks in your life that made you ultimately succeed?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And like your dad, who knew, I know, didn't know well, but know him. I probably 5 or 6 different recessions. I mean, I came out of undergraduate school in 1978, and it was a tough time. And then we had the slight recession resulting from the tax law changes in '86, and then the savings and loan crisis, and then the tech bubble burst, and then the housing crisis and recession, and more recently the COVID um,
Right.
related recession. And so all of them have been very different. But one of the things that you learn from them is don't panic. Um,
Right.
you know, so the couple things that is it related to not having the success we hope for, or having true loss, is realizing that no one can take away your capability, and nobody can um, really take away your ethics and your credibility but you. And in tough times, it was really important to me that I preserved both, and I remembered the fact that this may be tough. A lot of people were having tough times. How am I
Right.
going to handle it? That mattered. I mean, I owed in the Great Recession, I had, almost $40 million worth of debt to a bank. It wasn't a national bank, but and it happened to be non-recourse debt. Thank God, I was smart
Thank
enough to do
goodness.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, that's one of the lessons I learned early on, is about non-recourse and signing personally. I
Yeah.
saw others who did that in the savings and loan crisis and said, not happening.
Yeah.
And so that served me well, and I learned from it. I learned from others. But how I handled the relationship with the bank, I could have just slid the keys across the table and said, tough luck. But I didn't.
Yeah.
I said to him, hey, listen, this is unfortunate. How do you want to handle it? Uh, I continue to help you resolve this. This is now your asset. But what can I do to help you? And because of that, I have a great relationship. And that will,
Mm.
I think if I went back to them, they would say, absolutely happy to do business with you. And so I think one of the things you learn from these tough times is you just do the right thing, even if it's not the best thing for you sometimes. And that's the ethic I think we want everybody to have in this business.
Yeah. Get ahead of trouble. It's very important. And hit it head on and get in front of it and say, hey, how do we solve this problem, as opposed to run away from it, where a lot of people do. So, viewership, just so you know, Mark, a lot of people watching this are real estate agents, real estate entrepreneurs of all ages. I would assume probably your students will pick up on this eventually. But I would assume, as a young, let's say mid 30-year-old, probably are the majority of your students of all ages, 30 probably to 50, one of their biggest questions, and one of the questions that I get asked the most, is how do I become successful? How do I make a lot of money in real estate? If you had to look back in your life, what are some of the steps, if you had to relive those steps, and that you teach your students so they too can garner similar or not more success than you or I have had?
Yeah. You know, First of all, you have to be passionate about what you're doing, because this is a business that's not easy. And sometimes it takes a long
Yeah.
time for that success to be realized. And so recognizing the fact that it's really difficult to make a quick buck. And so I think you have
Mm,
to be passionate, and you have to have a framework in your life that allows you to pursue that passion. Lacking either one of those, it's going to be tough to be successful. So make sure that your life is set up to deal with what you're going to have to deal with. Understand that
mhm.
it's not going to be easy, and it's going to take longer than you think. Just as it's saying in this business, everything takes longer. It costs more than you think, and that is a
Boy, that's the
truism.
truth. Yep.
Yeah, that is a truism. So I, would tell people, one, recognize that. Two, it's not about us. It's not what we think that matters. Real estate is an asset that exists in an interesting place in society, because it is both a financial vessel. It's a way to create wealth and to transfer wealth. But at the same time, what we're creating are things that society needs in order to
Mm,
function. So whether it's housing or shopping or offices, it's the real estate developer that is one who's creating these places. And if you're an investor and buying them, you're buying something that other people are relying on to use,
mm.
and you're going to lease them the space. So really, truly understand the fact that you're providing a service when you're in this business, and it's a service to society, and you got to understand what society wants and needs, because that's what demand really is. It's the demand of others that have a use for whatever it is we're buying, we're owning, we're developing. And so be a real student of the community and of the industry and the market itself, because you need that demand. Without it, you just can't. And so be cognizant of those things.
So when you have
Um,
students that go through your program, I was going to ask,
yes.
when you have students that go through your program, obviously they come from all around the world because it's one of the most prestigious in the United States. What are some of the key qualities that you see successful students have that go out to the workforce after they get your degree and implement successfully?
Michael, it really depends on where people are coming from and
Mm,
what their passion is and where they want. So we have students that, are very passionate in providing more socially focused real estate, like affordable housing, developing community health centers, charter schools, things of that nature. And then we have others that are really interested in wealth creation through creation, or we have those that are interested in more of the institutional side of the business. So it really depends on the person and where they want to take the education. The education that we provide is a more of a generalist degree. And so we're not teaching people to be analysts for private equity firms, but we teach them what those people do, and many of them come out and go to that side of the business. And so I think
mm.
to answer your question more directly, that are successful are what I would call committed participants. They're in the program and they're taking full advantage of the opportunity and the education, and they truly become students of the business itself.
Mm.
And they really understand what role they want to play and how they're going to participate in that role. We have a lot of students from various backgrounds, and they want the degree done. I
Mhm.
just want to be there. I'm going to do what I need to do. I want to get the degree. But then there's that come in and they're really interested in evolving as a person and as a professional. And you see different outcomes. I mean, I spot them when they show up. And that's fine. I'm not, either one of them is a perfectly reasonable, rational reason for going through a master's program. But I know who's going to go be successful by their desire to participate.
Desire to participate. So my question for you is, assume you've had mentors in your life that has shaped your life, right? And has shaped your success and your career path. What have they taught you, and what are some of those takeaways that you teach your students and or our ship today?
We have, I mean, I start with my dad and my mom, and really what they to me is, listen, it doesn't matter, what you go to do, go be the best in whatever it is you're going to go do. I mean, my mom would literally say, I don't care if you're a garbage man, go be the best garbage man. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's takes really becoming someone who's going to commit themselves to doing what's necessary to succeed, right? As you're doing. So my mom and my dad also taught me the ethics of good, decent. Um, it's
Yes.
easy to do the wrong thing. It's hard to do the right thing. And
Mm.
um, regardless of how hard it is, you've got to do the right thing. So my parents, I have friends that, you see yourself with good people in your life, and they provide not only support, but they provide reference, they provide
Mm,
guidance, they provide counsel. And so, you surround yourself with those people. And then professionally, a number of people that believed in me and have helped me. And, some of them, I may have been diametrically opposite of them as people, either my ideology or, my focus, but I learned a lot from them. And you learn a lot from people who don't do the right thing as well, right?
right. Right.
There's a, it's merely a reference point. Um, I've had several, like the very first investor I had is a
Hmm.
gentleman by the name of Willard Chilcott. And Willard believed that I was going to be a good manager of our assets. And he was a very smart business guy. But he wanted to make sure that I had the support. And so he provided a very gentle guiding hand early in my career on how to pursue this as a business and pursue investments. I also had the pleasure of, one of the things that I've done in my career was I was responsible for all of the U.S. assets for a Swiss investment private equity company. And the patriarch of that company really took me under his wings and guided me through some really interesting, very interesting and difficult situations, took my guidance, provided his input, and helped me understand how you do the right thing, even very difficult situations. So those are a
Mm.
couple of examples of people who have helped me throughout my career. And then, I made this transition into academics. And I was fortunate because I've been a lifelong learner. And so if you look at my resume, my education has supported my being in this position in addition to my professional experience. But you need a champion. You need to have
Mm.
somebody who is your champion. And I had, when I started work, in fact, the reason that I started doing the work at the university was because I had a champion that you are really the right person to do this. We want you to, and I'll support you internally. And so, for people that are working with organizations, you need to have a champion and somebody who's going to support you to be a successful person and professional. I think that's important to have it as well. And with them, I wouldn't have been successful.
So it's very important to have great mentorship, obviously, and also a guiding hand, because it sounds like other than your father, you had a few mentors in your professional career that got you in the right directions. For those starting out, or for those, that aren't doing as well in their business as they'd hope, maybe the recession has taken part of their business away. What are some ways that you have seen your students and your business colleagues succeed when times are tough? Other than doing the right thing, what are some things they could take away
Yeah.
today that they can implement right after this call that might help change the trajectory of business in a positive way?
So one of the things I tell people that I mentor in particular is to think of yourself as a business. So this is the business of you. And the business of you can have multiple income streams. So you may have a
Mm,
job that provides you a salary. You may have other interests that either are cash flowing or you want to pursue as cash flowing interest. You need to have your own business plan as you
mm,
for the business of you. And that business plan, if you run a business, a successful business, has advisors. And you are best, going back to something I said just a few minutes ago, you're best to surround yourself with good people. And so that business of you needs that guidance because you have opportunities, you need support, even if that support is introductions or to help you organize yourself properly, to make the necessary connections. So I tell people, think of yourself as a business and think about what your competencies are, what your capacity is, define what you want to do. And it can be multiple things, but you have to organize yourself around those multiple things. And it helps to have a lot of guidance. And, the guidance may be other professionals that you're aligned with. And don't forget that you're in business to make money. And when you make money, right, you also have other obligations, tax. And I've seen people revel in their success only to find out that they had phantom income and they had income tax issues and they find themselves in stress because they didn't properly organize life in this themselves. So be aware of what you're doing.
I think those are some amazing points, and I wanted to stress, how important is it to get a financial education, a personal financial education in the business of real estate?
I think it's critical. This is the most regulated business in the United States. And it's complicated sometimes. It's easy. The saying goes, from 30,000 feet, it looks like an art form, but on the ground, it's a gigantic, never-ending to-do list of lots of details. And, those details include the financial side of the business itself. And that financial side includes not only your cash flow, revenue, and expenses, but income tax and how you structure yourself, understanding what those liabilities are, both contingent and current liabilities and long-term liabilities. And if you're not aware of them, and if you don't have the background, you're not going to be able to properly understand the opportunity and structure it the right way, and then you end up with a problem.
Yes.
So I think it's really important to understand this. Otherwise, like I said earlier, you revel in some immediate success only to get killed later.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because when I host in-person events and I talk to, let's say, real estate agents or people in our industry, I have them raise their hands and I say, how many of you are making 100, 200, 3, 400, $500,000 a year? A few people raise their hands. And then the next question I ask is, how many of you actually track your net worth? Maybe one hand out of 10 pops up. How many track your cash flow statements? None. How many of you have a budget? Maybe one, two. So what's interesting to me is what I've seen, even in my 33 years of life, is money, which is the lifeblood of real estate and a business, requires attention and it requires movement. In our real estate business, it's very interesting because the movement, right? It's that mercurial asset of moving monies around basically to either acquire land, to acquire a cushion for our construction costs, etc., and making sure when times that are difficult come, because as we know in this industry, they do come, unfortunately, they come quicker than we ever anticipate. We never know when. You have to have access to those lines of credit or access cash. How do people, in a way, let's say as a student, set themselves up for success early on? Where do they begin as far as your mind as an educator?
You know, I think you've got to start with a scale that you understand and can manage. Many times you
Mm.
see people who implode under the weight of their own success. So make sure that you have competency in whatever you're doing, and make sure that whatever you're doing doesn't exceed your capacity, because both of those things kill you.
Mm.
Um, as far as the financial capacity is concerned, um, be careful of debt. As I tell my students, debt is a sword, equity is a plow. Which one would you rather fall on? When hard times come, we fall, and I'd rather fall on the pillow.
Yes.
So be careful of the debt, because yes, it is an incredibly useful tool. The risk of debt is repayment, and you are best to plan for your downside rather than simply planning for your upside. And
Mm.
that's not always easy, because human nature is to look at the opportunity, and we have this inherent bias that we favor that, and we don't favor the downside, right? So you become it's an optimism bias. Be careful of that optimism bias. Be very careful of it. And so make sure that you have, so I'm going to add one more thing to this. How do you deal with that? Is you need to have a variety of scenarios that you lay out at the beginning: an optimistic, a likely, and a pessimistic. And you have to manage whatever you're doing in such a way that you realize which one of those tracks you're on, and have a plan to deal with it regardless.
Mm.
It's easy, it's easier to distribute more money than it is to go ask others for more money. So,
Boy,
be
ain't that the
careful.
truth.
Realize,
Yep.
yeah. So this is a business where we're making decisions today about things that aren't going to happen for a long time, in an environment that's constantly changing, that we have little or no control over. So it's a lot of people that are new to the business or don't have a good deal of experience or education have a tendency to believe that if they create a pro forma, that's exactly what the world is going to look like. And it's not. It just simply is
Yeah.
not the case. And so don't be fooled by the fact you've got some Excel spreadsheet that says you're going to be a billionaire. Um, the input assumptions become important in the fact that you created it around a set of assumptions that may not be valid a year from now is important to realize.
So I have a scenario for you. Let's say you're 55 years old, right? You made a bad bet, a bad real estate investment. You went to zero, or you went beneath zero. Maybe you filed bankruptcy or something like that. And you have to start from scratch, right? Start all over again. If you have the knowledge, which you have, and a myriad of life experience, how would you do it again if you had to?
So let me give you a little bit of background before I give you an answer. Um, I came out of, I went to Stanford's executive program, business school, and created a company. I had sold a home building company in 1998, and created another company that was focused on developing socially and environmentally responsible communities. And we were working in Florida, Arizona, California, and we developed, 10, well, probably closer to 11,000 lots in
Wow,
these
it's a
various
lot.
communities. We had another line of business, which was fee development work. And we were providing fee development work for a variety of clients across the US. Great business. And then we also had a third line of business, which was wetlands mitigation banking. And it's kind of a weird business, but in 2000, we really launched the company. we were doing great. We were doing really well up until 2005.
Hmm.
2005, things started to crumble because of the housing market. 2006, it crashed, and so this is a tale of woe, and it's also a tale of caution. We had made a mistake in that both of the primary lines of business were really about generating current cash flow. So when you develop master plan communities, when you develop lots that you sell to builders, it's a cash flow business that requires you to constantly be creating new projects. We did not have cash
Yes.
flowing assets sufficient to really continue to run the business. And so going from, we were doing 60, $70 million in revenues a year to almost nothing. Um, and so that's a word of caution. Realize the success that you're having is based upon certain conditions, and make sure that you
Mm.
plan for all conditions, right? So a balance in what we were doing would have been much more favorable. But it happened, right? And we dealt with it. Um, and I got to a point, again, I'm going to answer your question more directly, where I had to decide what I want to continue to do. And the opportunity at ASU had emerged from that. And I made the cognizant decision that that was an opportunity I would never have again, probably in my life. And I wanted to pursue that. And so I shifted what my passion was focused on. And
Mm.
and I think to answer your question more generally is when there is a condition like a disaster, it's an opportunity. And as I said earlier in the conversation, one thing you learn by going through these is don't panic. Take assessment of who you are, what you have, what you can do, and be thoughtful about how you now go apply those things. Recognize the fact that we have to know what opportunities exist and what the market really wants and needs. Um, and then you go pursue, and sometimes it's just restarting what you did before. Sometimes it's
Hmm.
restarting what you did before, different structure. Sometimes it's completely pivoting to something different. There's no right answer.
I think you hit some very interesting points, especially in our industry, in the development side. I know you're absolutely right when it comes to the cash flow generation concepts, right? You're making a fortune, and then when those spigots start to dry up, or there's no more deals to develop, or no more banks to pay for those development of those projects, what do you do in the meantime, right? And I think a lot of people, they don't understand how important liquidity is to our business model and to our business in general, right? It's almost the oxygen, the lifeblood of what we do. And I think so many people, they don't understand the weighting system of cash, meaning what do I have? What are my cash equivalents? What do I have access to if I need it? And then what's the worst scenario if a tragedy or a disaster or something unexpected happens? How do I mitigate this and get it right? And I think you hit the nail on the head, especially people my own age. I know for a fact many people plan for the best and they certainly do not prepare for the worst. But because of my father and because of my background, I've seen it one too many times where you go from a $5 million house down to a $1,000 a month apartment that you're renting. And it's a common story that I think a lot of people share. So I appreciate you relaying that and the fact that you can reinvent yourself. Just be aware of those things. And in this market scenario, obviously, I would assume you and your students are looking at the Federal Reserve right now. You're looking at the Fed funds rate. You're looking at the macro economy in general. What are some of the things that you forecast in the coming year or two with our macroeconomic economy and how it affects real estate?
I'm going to go back to don't panic. We haven't fallen
Yeah.
off a cliff. You look at the fundamentals, and here in Arizona, our fundamentals are still really pretty good. So that's the demand driver, right? Our economy continues to grow. We're in a position as a place that we're a growth community. We're a magnet for people, and so that's, I think, a good place to start. Is there is and there will continue to be demand. It
Yes.
is some of the factors of providing supply that are very difficult, because they do require capital. So investors look at, all other alternative places to put their money, and you're also concerned about debt, and so lenders are risk adverse. And when you get an environment like this, both of those have memories, and those memories of the most recent problem isn't COVID, it's the Great Recession. And in consequence, they go, I'm going to pause. I want to slow down here. And so that's making it difficult, in addition to cost of creation. So labor, construction costs. It's tough to do business right now. It really is very tough.
Yeah.
However, demand continues, right? We happen to be a focus for a segment of the economy that's got a national security focus on it, which is semiconductors. And you look at the amount of manufacturing space that's been created in the last couple of years in the Phoenix market, it's more than I think we've ever had. So it's historic in the amount of industrial development, but it's not just all warehousing. There's a lot of manufacturing, advanced manufacturing. That's really good for our economy. That drives primary job growth. That's important to us. There's opportunities because that land needs space. And
Right.
some of that is housing. Some of it is secondary jobs and tertiary jobs that come with the primary jobs. So, I think that what happens is, because of the financial markets and because of monetary policy, it's going to be bumpy. It's going to be bumpy for
Mm.
the next 6 to 8 months. I think towards the end of 2024, barring any global systemic problem, we're going to see the 2023 start to look much brighter. And I think we're going to see, some continued growth beginning 2024. There's an old saying: when there's blood in the street, there's opportunities, even if it's your own blood. And when you start looking around this marketplace, is when you have these pauses and you have this contraction by certain players, it means there's new opportunities out there for you. And sometimes it provides opportunity for those who couldn't participate before. It was too frothy, it was too difficult, it was too much competition. So be thoughtful. Pick your spots, but understand that sometimes it's better to do nothing for a bit. I wrote an article
Yeah.
during the beginning of the pandemic, which was titled "Sailing in Fog Without Radar." And you get to certain situations. The beginning of the pandemic, I've sailed in my life, and when you sail in fog, you drop your sails. You just become very quiet and listen, because that's really what your best navigational tool is at that point. And when things become very
Mm.
hectic and very difficult, sometimes it's best to just pause and look and listen for a little bit before you take some action. Um, so I would advise being very thoughtful, understanding what you can do, taking the opportunity to organize yourself, and then go look for those opportunities. I think we'll
And
be
then a
in.
lot of
I think we'll be
people,
in pretty good.
yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree. And whenever there's disjointment in the marketplace in any facet, there's a myriad of opportunities to take advantage of. The biggest things I understand, what I see a lot of people of is A, they're not financially equipped to take advantage of these opportunities, right? They may not know the right sources for the capital and or have the friends in those areas that can deploy that capital. And so, how important in your career, not only as an educator, but as someone that's been in business and been successful in the business, how important is it to be around successful people that basically can change the trajectory of your life? And I mean by that is, I believe you are who you're in proximity close to, right? We all are sponges in a lot of ways, and it's important for me, especially. I mean, cliche as it sounds, that's one of the I moved to PE at 31 was because I wanted to be around the most successful people in the state. And I wanted to learn from them. I wanted to be a small fish in the big pond, right? How important is that? How do you teach your students the importance of proximity towards success?
I think it's critical. Um, you know, you need capital, and you're looking for investors. And rather than going out simply somebody who's got some money that will invest in your idea, find people that will invest in you. Because as I mentioned earlier,
Mm,
the world changes, right? And if you have someone who's only invested in a project, and the world turns out to be different than what you thought when you made the investment, the last thing you want is an investor to sue you because you didn't deliver on your promise. And you want to
mhm.
do the right thing right way with the right people, knowing that the world isn't always what you think it's going to be. And you want people that invest in you. And then what you have to do is you have to treat them correctly. You have to be their true fiduciary and put their interest ahead of yours. If you do that, even in tough times, you're going to come out okay.
That's very good advice. I couldn't agree with you more.
So my
And
my
I
advice
think
is,
it's also important to
yeah,
realize.
yeah, my advice is to,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, my advice, don't just, don't just go find money. Find the right people that have financial capacity to work with you to pursue opportunity. But you have to have a good rational opportunity to take the people to begin with.
Now, having taught a lot of students, are there, what I've realized is it seems strange, but like those people that are self starters, that are consummate learners, that are sponges, are kind of a hands-off approach where they just ingest so much information and act on that information seem to be the most successful. Others are let's say lifetime students where they learn but they fail to act or they fail to take risks because they fear failure. How are you able to combat that as an educator and seeing that in your students, because I would assume some students are that way as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, not everybody's cut out to be an entrepreneur, an investor. I mean, real estate investment is inherently entrepreneurial, the true definition of
Yeah.
entrepreneurship. They're just not cut out for it. They may think they are, but they're not. I have others who have the the ability, but they are cautious. I tell my
Mm.
students this: you make money by pursuing whatever it is that line of business is. And if you're so cautious, never are able to execute on a project, you'll never make money. When you're making an investment, you're not making an
Mm.
investment in an asset or a project. You're making an investment in future profits. And that's really what you're when you take that money, yours and your investors, and you say, I'm going to go employ it to do this thing. It's not to own the thing. It's not to do the thing. It's for whatever it is to generate more money than what you've put into it. And so you have to understand that you got to take risk. Now it's a matter of
Mm.
how you organize yourself for that risk. If you're never going to buy something because you're overly cautious, you'll never make money. So there's a
Yeah.
point at which you got to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go back to one more thing, Michael. The business of you, so to speak. People mistake of looking at this as doing a deal or doing deals, and I hate that mentality. Those deals are idiosyncratic.
Mm.
Those deals are the execution of a business strategy in order to support a business operation, because
Mm.
you have to live while the opportunity is being realized.
Yes.
And if you fail to realize that and you don't structure yourself the right way, you run out of the ability to continue to live while the opportunity is being realized. That's another failure that I think people unfamiliar with the business and young people make, is because it takes longer, costs more, and because the world is uncertain, you all of a sudden find yourself pursuing opportunities that make all the sense in the world. They're great opportunities, but you can't afford to continue to pursue them.
Boy, ain't that the truth. It's very interesting you bring that up because when people come to me and they ask me about steps towards financial independence or success, I'm curious to see if it aligns with what you teach your students or what you believe, or if you have a different facet. But the first step usually is you have to obviously earn income, right? You have to have something that is giving you a consistent amount of income, whether that's a 1099 or a W-2 in the beginning. And then you want to quickly, after you pay your taxes, you can survive, you want to convert that earned income into passive income as quickly as possible. Passive, reoccurring assets that pay you on a monthly basis. And the best way I found to do that was real estate. I mean, I don't know any other asset class in the United States where you can take a dollar, leverage it safely into $5, and create a drip of, say, 25 to 50 cents on that dollar, every single year or what have you, right? And then once you get that passive employment, you don't quit. You have to create generational wealth if that's your goal. And that generational wealth is only adapted when you mirror basically technology, financial aptitude, people, and a story together as one. What are your thoughts on those two steps?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think, wise, rational thinking, right? Um, Harder to do for some people than it seems like
Yes.
on the surface. That becomes the real issue now, is how do you execute on that idea? Um,
Yes.
in If you've got somebody who's in that I'm a 1099 W-2 person, and I want to go pursue this, your ability to now convert some of your net income, after tax income, into cash flowing assets is hard. especially if you've got a family, you've got other things in your
Yep.
life. And so I think you've got to be really cognizant of that, um, and realistic about it. One of the reasons why we seek investors is because it's hard for people to come up with all of the necessary cash,
Yes.
and relationships become equally very important. You may not need a lot of the cash yourself. You may just need a little bit to show that you've got a proportionate amount of quote unquote skin in the game. And so I would invest in relationships at the same time as you're investing in financial instruments, because
Oh, I
they
can't
may
agree with you
be,
more.
yeah, they may be more readily available to you to take advantage of an opportunity.
It's a good point. It's a very good point. And a lot of it is, again, the execution component is so difficult because it's very difficult in human nature to take one step forward and two steps back. And that seems in many ways to be the game of real estate, right? Once you think you have your stride, some other thing came and knocked us down a few pegs. Now we have to rebuild. And that seems to be the siren cry of so many people in this business, right? How do you cope with that misalignment, right? And or those things that come when you least expect it.
Yeah, it's not easy. Best laid plans of mice and men are soon laid to waste. Um,
Boy, ain't that the truth?
so, yeah. Um, so, it's not easy. I don't think that there's a singular right way to do some of this stuff. I think that, um, a lot of things that we've been talking about are around sure that they're right for you, who you are, what your competencies are, what your capacity is, and then being realistic about the fact that it's really hard to get this stuff done.
And how important in real estate and in business in general is marketing and sales?
Um, I think it's one of the things that's many times often overlooked, right? So we focus on the creation of the project, we focus on budget, we focus on schedule. We forget that that's not what this is about. This is about generating revenue from whatever it is we're creating. And it's, I think even some of the more sophisticated people in this business don't always appreciate the fact that it's others that generate our revenue for us, and those others are our lessees or our buyers. And the success
Correct.
comes not from controlling your budget, but from the ability to generate that revenue. And that revenue comes from in a competitive environment from your ability to get people to vote for you. They vote for your project by leasing it or by buying it. And so you've got to know who your constituents are, sticking with that analogy, and make sure that you provide the best thing for them. And that requires creating mind share, creating awareness. That's all marketing. And then you got to be able to execute
Yes.
on the sales side. So it's really important. You get a lot of people that come out of construction management or architecture or accounting or finance backgrounds that are really good about one aspect of this business, and they just suck when it comes to the marketing side. This is not a gee, if I build it, they will come kind of thing. Right? You got to know who your target market is, and you got to be out in front to appeal to them.
Yep. It's funny. I was talking to my brother the other day, and he's an undergrad Wharton guy. He got his MBA at UCLA, and he relayed to me. He says, Mike, I got to tell it to you. I thought he's 7.5 years older than me. He says, you took a really interesting, circuitous route. But one thing that you understood that I didn't is I played things by the book, and you tried to further understand people. And I said, a business is only a people game, right? Life is a people game. Everything we do
Right.
is how do you calibrate, mitigate, and go out and create meaningful relationships that can stand the test of time. And those that can do that the best, I think, are the most successful in life. But so many people, like you said, miss the forest for the trees. They know how to build the deal, do the deal, execute on the deal. But the most important part of the deal is how do you get the lessee and or the buyer in there to vote for you, as you would say, to give you that reassurance of, yes, you did the right thing. Yes, you are a success. And that's the hardest thing, I think, for people to grasp. They're either doing one or the other, but very few have the ability to do it all, or at least have the right team in place to do it all. So
Well, you
before
just
we end,
said the
Mark,
correct. I was going to say you
yeah,
just
no,
said
yeah,
that
yeah,
what I believe is
tell,
the
yeah,
correct thing. The correct thing is the team, right? Um,
yes,
it, you cannot do this by yourself. You have to
yes,
have really good people on your team. That's really one of the first things. It goes back to this relationship, surround yourself with good people. That includes the people you hire. You need
100%,
you need a team of really thoughtful people, and you have to then trust them.
100%, yeah. Yeah. Now, is there a quote or something that resonates well with you that I think encapsulates what we talked about today that you'd like to share with the audience?
Oh boy, a quote. Other than a bunch of them that I threw out already. um,
There's some good ones in there.
yeah, and I believe this to be the case. I see it as my students, and I try to impart this on them. It's a hard business. You're not always going to be successful. You're going to have fits and starts. It's not how you start that matters. It's how you finish that matters. And I think your ability to get to the point where you finish successfully requires doing a lot of the things that we just talked about. If you hit one of those bumps, if you aren't successful right away, don't worry about it. Reassess, recalibrate, um, and as long as you're doing the thing the correct way, the ethical way, the responsible way, um, you're likely to then, in the long run, in the end, have success.
And I believe in that fully. And, I think one of the things that suits me well is I think success is just doing the thing that we know we're supposed to do on a daily basis for a very long period of time. A lot of people try to take a shortcut or do some quick fix thing or something that we know doesn't work in the long term. But to do what you know you're supposed to do every single day for an extended period of time, it creates a lot of discipline. I mean, it requires a lot of discipline and a lot of fortitude. And so I think whatever someone wants who's watching this, whether it be education, financial success, or maybe getting in shape or any of those things, I mean, how important is it to you, Mark, to do those simple things you're supposed to do daily without stopping?
It's very important that you have discipline, because you have to, that gigantic to-do list I mentioned earlier requires discipline, to get up every day. Things aren't pleasant always. Things aren't, I mean, there's parts of this business I'm just terrible at, and I know it.
Yeah.
And I've had to convince myself to do the things that I'm not good at, because they're important. And so I think that it's to know what you have to do and to develop the mentality that creates the discipline to follow the process and follow through and do what's necessary, even if it's hard and even if it's unpleasant, to be able to go do it.
That's life. And that's the journey towards success, is just, riddled with failure. I think that's very true. Now, Mark, where can they follow you if they want to get in contact with you and or maybe learn more about your program over at ASU? What's the best way to get in contact with you?
Emails are great. That's very
What's your
simple. It's
email?
Mark. Yeah, it's mark.stapp, Stapp at asu.edu.
Fantastic. Well, is there anything you want to leave us with today that maybe something to think about as we end the call?
No, nothing further. I think, Michael, I mean, this has been a really pleasant conversation. I appreciate this opportunity, and I hope people that listen appreciate what we're trying to impart on them, which is this is not easy. You know, pursue it as a for the right reasons, and make sure that you're doing it the right way. You know, be more than benignly correct. I think you have to be responsible, and that will bode well for you in the long run.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you, Mark, again for taking the time, and thank you guys for watching. Hope you have a wonderful holiday season, and we'll see you guys again next week. Take care. Bye, Mark.
Happy happy holidays, everybody. Thank you. Bye.